All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating and, I gotta say, pretty intense 18th century text. We're going to try and understand a worldview that seriously shaped generations. I'm talking about Thomas Boston's concept of the state of wrath. So you gotta understand the entire argument of the text we're looking at. It's all built on this one single powerful verse from Ephesians. This is the theological bedrock. It really sets the stage for everything else we're about to cover. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 parts, just following the logic of the original text. We'll start with what this state of wrath even is, then the nature of that wrath, who it applies to, why it's supposed to be just, and finally, is there a way out? All right, first up, let's get right into it. What does this text actually mean when it talks about a state of wrath? Okay, so here's the key thing. The text describes this not as, a fleeting emotion. It's not like God is just having a bad day. It's a fundamental legal and relational state. A better way to think about it is less like someone's mad at you and more like you're a criminal who's already been sentenced and is just, awaiting execution. It's a condition you're born into. Pretty heavy, right? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The text is super careful to draw a line between God's wrath and, our everyday human idea of anger. They're not the same thing at all. So let's see what that difference looks like. So, on one hand, you have human wrath, which is messy and emotional, right? But the text argues that divine wrath is totally different. It's not God losing his temper. Not at all. It's presented as this pure, undisturbed, and perfectly just act of his will against sin. It's an expression of perfect justice, not some kind of emotional outburst. And this wrath isn't just some abstract concept floating around. The source claims it actually shows up in 3 distinct ways. First, in God's basic attitude towards someone who isn't saved. Second, in the law itself, the written condemnation. And third, in God's direct actions right here in the world. And man, the text uses some powerful imagery to describe the internal damage. It talks about the soul just withering away, losing its connection to God. It even talks about something called judicial blindness, which is basically a state where you're just unable to see spiritual truth. Get this, even things that look like blessings are described as curses in disguise. So, you might be asking, just how powerful is this wrath supposed to be? Well, the text definitely doesn't leave that to the imagination. It lays out some very specific characteristics to hammer home just how absolute and overwhelming this power is. So there are actually 8 qualities listed in the text, all designed to convey this sense of total power. We're going to look at the 4 most significant ones, just so we can really grasp the gravity of what's being described here. First up, irresistible. The idea is you can't fight against it. The text uses an image like a worm trying to fight the boot that's about to crush it. Yeah, there's just no standing against it. Next, it's insupportable, meaning you can't endure it. It's described as this unbearable weight that will just sink a person down to the deepest, darkest depths. And third, this one is a big one. It's eternal. It never ends. I mean, the text chillingly states that even after millions of ages have passed, it's still the wrath to come. It just keeps flowing forever. And finally, and this is absolutely crucial to the whole argument, it's perfectly just. The text calls it a clear fire, meaning there's not even a hint of unfairness to it. You have to remember this point, because this idea of justice is central to the entire worldview. Okay, so with that in mind, let's move on. The big question now is, who exactly is in this state of wrath? I mean, is anyone safe? Well, the author asks that very question. And the answer provided is, let's just say it's clear and completely uncompromising. The short answer? No one is exempt. The text argues that this state is totally universal. It applies to every single person from the moment they're born. It doesn't matter if you're ignorant of it, if you come from a privileged family, if you're super religious, or even how old you are. It's presented as the default setting for all of humanity, period. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. How could a state this severe possibly be considered just? It's a fair question, and, well, the text totally anticipates it. It actually lays out a very detailed theological defense for why this is righteous. This whole justification basically rests on 4 big pillars. First, there's the idea of a broken first covenant, the belief that we're all tied to Adam's original sin. Second, it's just the nature of divine justice. A holy God has to punish sin. Third, they point to our own conscience, that little voice inside that tells us we've done wrong. And finally, the suffering of Christ is presented as the ultimate proof that, yep, a payment for sin is absolutely necessary. So here's the absolute linchpin of the argument. You see, the text doesn't frame sin as just some minor mistake. It's seen as an offense against an infinite God. And so, in this line of thinking, an infinite offense deserves, well, an infinite punishment. The punishment has to fit the one who is offended, not just the action itself. That's the key. So, after painting this incredibly bleak, almost hopeless picture of humanity's natural state, the text finally offers a way out. But it's a single, very narrow path of escape from this state of wrath. And this is a great way to see the two paths the text lays out. They're totally mutually exclusive. On one side, you have the covenant of works. Think of this as being married to the law. You have to be perfectly obedient, and there's just no room for forgiveness. On the other side, you have the covenant of grace. This is being married to Christ, where salvation is a gift and forgiveness is at the very core of the deal. So at the end of the day, this whole complex, detailed argument, it all funnels down to this one single urgent call to action. This is it. The text presents this as the one and only way to escape condemnation. So why dig all this up? Why deconstruct this 300-year-old theological map of damnation and deliverance? Well, it's more than just a history lesson, right? When you understand this stark framework, you get a key that unlocks the internal logic behind a worldview that has been deeply influential. It helps us see the very foundations of how people have thought about justice, morality, and salvation, ideas that, whether we realize it or not, still echo in our culture today.